Welcome to Recovery Comes Home Radio, your go-to podcast for all things related to addiction recovery. Whether you are an individual in recovery, a concerned loved one, or a dedicated professional, this podcast is tailored just for you. Here we are all about empowering you with the tools, insights, and inspiration you need to move forward. So grab your headphones, tune in, and let's embark on this transformative journey together. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Recovery Comes Home Radio, the podcast where we explore reconnecting with the community and reintegration into the family. I am so excited to have this next guest with us. We are in for a treat today because I have none other than Dr. Daren Brooks. Daren studied physical fitness and health psychology at BYU, graduating valedictorian with an MS degree, and then later went back to get his DO. And now he is practicing dermatology. But before all of that, you really have had a career as a health coach, and you've had contracts with people like IBM and Kodak and Cisco and Coca-Cola. And you even consulted for NASA at one point. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's 7 years down there in Clear Lake. So yeah, the great organization for sure.
Yeah. So when I met you, you were running a place called The Bridge in St. George, Utah. In 2009 is when I first met you. And The Bridge is still going strong. I want to make sure that our listeners have plenty of time to hear all about your passion project, because I know that you do all of this other stuff, and they are accolades in their own right. But your heart really is with The Bridge, isn't it, Daren?
It is, and I've tried to dabble, and I have kind of an adult ADD problem with what I want to do when I grow up. So somewhere between motorcycles and car dealerships and consulting and health, and I just always keep coming back to The Bridge, and it just keeps expanding, and it keeps sucking me in further, and I keep kicking off other pieces, and the focus is getting just. I mean, even though it's been 23 years since we started this crazy thing, I've always loved lots and lots of things going on, but now it's really more consuming, and it's just becoming pretty spectacular. So yeah, I love The Bridge.
And let's be clear, because a lot of our audience is here from recovery from all types of things. This health wellness center called The Bridge, you created that for people that are really like me, that had debilitating critical illnesses and really had trouble balancing dealing with a chronic illness that frequently has been critical, and then being able to know what's next. What do I do now? And who am I apart from this illness?
Yeah, I came from the dark too. You know, I came from an early background of sexual abuse and all kinds of other crazy things. So I had a really great surfacey looking life, but there were a lot of things going on underneath that. Not within my family, thank goodness. I had a wonderful, mom and dad and brother and sister and all of that, but very confusing to grow up that way. And through high school and dating and married and divorced and on and off of medicines, and The Bridge really was something that I kind of fantasized about while I was in the dark. I didn't want to go to the hospital or the psych ward. I'd experienced some of that. It doesn't help anyone. I mean, really, it might keep somebody safe, but having somebody walk down and offer you a magazine or a movie and a little paper cup of pills and checking on, when your insurance ran out to get you out of there back into this wild world again, So I thought, wait, that doesn't really heal anybody. And then I thought, well, the team it would take to heal somebody, like really heal a human, were very complicated. And I wrote a paper in college, and it was called The Human Animal. And I kind of theorized what it would take to keep a human happy in a zoo. And so you have them in a cage, and you assess them like any other animal and say, well, what's it going to take to have this person happy so they can be observed by people coming through, looking in this cage? And and it's well, they need friendship and they need support and they need, some drive and some purpose. And they need obviously the right food and water. Well, what kind of food? Well, what kind of, and how's their bed going to be? And do they really need some family? Do they need a sense of belonging? And I mean, it's just this impossible.
Right.
Impossible.
And because really on that, we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. Yeah. And a humans, if you really look closely, is very, very complicated. So in starting the bridge, I thought, well, we've got to have a bunch of expertise from the East. We've got to have some good energy work. We've got to have good, I mean, for example, at the bridge right now, we have a Reiki master, we have a sound bather, we have a foot zoner, we have an acupuncturist, we have energy workers, we have all of that. And then on the other side, to bridge that, we have massage and we have emotional training and EMDR and rapid eye, like all of that. And then we have nutritionist and physical therapy and excellent, clinical psych, really good high level clinical psych. And then
Absolutely.
physician like me, to manage the regular meds and the white coat stuff. So it really is this chronic problem of illness mentally and physically and spiritually and emotionally is a problem largely because the breadth of what most of us need is a lot wider. It's just a lot wider net than what you get with a book or with, a ketamine treatment or an electric shock therapy or
And then you're just released again to go figure it out for yourself.
yeah. Yeah, it's like, oh, good luck. You're like, wait, that's it? It's like, yeah, you can pay at the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've got this huge, complicated mess in my head. Well, good luck with that. We'll see you next Tuesday. You're like,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to do between now and next Tuesday?
Yeah, and it's important to recognize, you just made a point that I want to highlight there, is that when we're talking about recovery from any ailment, we're talking about dis-ease. And
Yeah.
dis-ease can be in the body, mind, or spirit. My husband and I live a 12-step lifestyle. And I know that's not for everybody, but what we can agree upon, I think, is that spiritual component is the way out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that's kind of a funky word these days, but it's the absolute truth. And I mean, how many vegan eating, daily exercising, hypersensitive, in touch, quote unquote, people do you know that are so psychologically neurotic, they barely function,
Right.
and then also how many people do you claim to, that claim to be spiritual, quote unquote, but they're extremely overweight or they have other addictions, but yet they lean on that piece. We're really complex as humans, but we're also very, very simple. And I think that spiritual piece, that energetic piece, I've been in med school, answer all the questions. They dub me a doctor, whatever. But that doesn't really help a human connect to themselves very well at all. And for one thing, how are you going to do that in a 9-minute appointment? And does Medicare pay for it? And I mean, it gets
and if they do, it's $2 on
yeah.
For a Tylenol.
Yeah, exactly. It's so the system's very broken. Humans are getting sicker. But they're getting sicker in a more complicated way. We've never been better at cancer. We've never been better at preventing a lot of like, I'd say, white coat illnesses. We're good at type 1 diabetes in kids. We're really good at things that we can kind of hit just right with a hammer and solve them. But the neurosis, the depression, the anxiety, the addiction, the general health of kids and adults it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. We have all of this rush for technology on one side, and then we have all of the sickness like kind of rushing on the other side, and they're not meeting at all. They just keep getting further and further apart. It's like,
well, it's the dichotomy of looking at Elon Musk that wants to take us all to Mars, and the fact that we're dealing with people that just can't see past their next high.
Right. And hi, like, and you and I, we've become dear friends over the years. We have this saying at the Bridge program: the only difference between a guest and staff is about 19 days. And then after that, the line gets awfully blurry because you're not really supposed to be a patient your whole life.
You're not.
You're not, and you're not really supposed to be a provider and act like you know it all your whole life either. You have to know when to shift. As a provider, you have to know when you've got to be a patient, and you need help. And as a patient, you've got to know that this isn't going to last. You've got to move through that space and become a provider. There's this idea that, oh, help me, I want. That. What about Bob? Business, but that those chronic patients end up becoming more addicted to being an enigma than they do, really having a deep desire to get well. So when you want to get well, like you've been through the dark and you now help people into the light, the best you can. And you still struggle with the dark, I'm sure, in some ways. I do. I mean, if any human's honest, it's like, well, we're all pretty messy. And faking it doesn't really help anybody. Talking about it does. But when you start like agreeing on principles,
Yeah.
what generally should a human eat to be healthy? Generally plants. Oh, okay. Let's get some bases down. Do you need love? Yeah. Do you need adequate sleep? Yeah, you do. Should water be the drink of choice most of the time? Yeah. Should you smoke? Not really. Should you alter yourself with chemistry, prescribed or otherwise? There's no difference to me. Well, probably not very often. You shouldn't be altered. You should learn who you are and what's really going on. Otherwise, how can you solve that? If you alter yourself every time you end up, really in trouble, then you'll end up always in trouble and always somewhere between being in trouble and being altered.
And being altered. And
yeah.
there really is it doesn't slow down the inevitable consequences.
Right. It will bite you.
It will bite you. I like to say that I'm a Libra with the Scorpio rising. That means I will take it to the very nth degree. I will give you the enough rope, and then when it's ready to snap up in a hangman's noose, I'm going to warn you once.
Right.
You better back up.
Right. Yeah. I've had a couple of those experiences with you, but thank goodness we've stayed close all these years, and I do love you. I love your work. But yeah, this idea of helping a human that's chronic is becoming the issue in developed countries, especially the US. We don't know what to do with someone that comes into a doctor's office with a clock ticking and having them say, gosh, my back kind of hurts. I'm not sleeping that well. I'm not that connected in my relationships. I'm pretty sad. I'm struggling at work. I don't have the motivation to really tune up my physical body. I choose the wrong foods. I'd love to get off of some of these medicines or this caffeine or this sugar or the heroin or the stuff. Oh, my doctor prescribed it. It's okay. I only take what my doctor prescribes. And you look at the scripts and go, you've got 8 that you're supposed to take like 3 times a day. And the only time you're asleep is when all of these, half of these medicines are taken at night to knock you out. Like, who are you?
Yeah.
And I think for me,
escape.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you and I have talked about this at length, but I think when we really consider how many ways a human can become addicted or dependent, it really starts to shed the light on how to get out of that too. I mean, can you become addicted to sugar? Yes. Food in general? Yes. Porn, of course. Like gambling? Yes, we know that. What about drugs? Well, yeah, of course. What about anxiety?
Yes. Oh. What about the addicted person? You're addicted to them.
Yeah. What about attaching to someone who has an addiction? And then you get this codependent business going on. Or depression. Can you become addicted to your own depression? Absolutely. Because depression, it's at its foundation is a slew of chemistry caused by the way you see yourself in the world. So, I always imagine myself, walking through the halls of the hospital with an IV pole dripping in my vein, and it's dripping in the message of all of my conscious and subconscious thoughts. So if I wake up every morning and I'm like, oh, welcome, Daren. Oh, okay. I'm not that great at mornings. No, drip. drip. Oh, I'll never really make drip. I don't think I'll ever get better. Drip, drip. Gosh, women are a lot smarter than men. Drip. No, no, men are way smarter than women. Drip, drip. I don't know if God, well, drip, drip. Oh, he does drip, drip. And we end up like dumping all of this chemistry. And if we can't get a handle on the way that we think and why we think that way and the experiences that really helped foster that, you'll end up feeling like you're just this person that is basically a victim of 1,000 things that you don't really even know. I mean, one of my favorite ways to kind of sleuth that out is as you observe the world. Right now I'm looking, can you observe a tree? Well, yeah. Well, then you must not be a tree if you can observe it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, can I observe this computer right here? Yeah, I can. Well, then I must not be a computer. I can see you over there. I must not be Adrian. Okay, well, and can I observe my feelings? I don't know. We'll try. Step back. I think I can. I think I can jump out of the rapids and observe them instead of feeling like they're going to swallow me or crush me. Oh, I think I can observe my depression. I think I can observe my addiction. I think I can observe my pain. Wow, what? You can? Yeah, I can observe. I can step back and then I end up with some of these really beautiful sayings. I am not the pain, but the pain is mine.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, I'm not the depression, but the depression's mine. Like I've got to figure out how to own this stuff and climb in bed with that. And then, the haunting question at the end of all of that, well, who's the observer?
Yeah.
Who's looking at all this stuff and observing and like processing this? Well, that's me. And then the question's like, oh no, well, who am I?
What do I do?
What do I do?
Who am I?
And that's where that connection has to be made to recover that Western medicine is so terrible at. I mean, they don't even claim to know anything about that. And to be honest, a lot of the East isn't that great either.
Right.
It's like, forgive my grandma and sleep on a magnetic bed and wear jade crystal and I'm good. No.
No. Well, and you and I have talked about so back up 5 years ago, it was more addiction with some people co-occurring disorder like bipolar, like psychoaffective. But now it's almost all mental health, secondary addiction.
Yeah.
We are running towards the Titanic, like you and I have talked about, to hurry up and play the music while the ship goes down.
Right. Yeah, rearranging chairs on the Titanic, I think, is what we've talked about.
Yeah. We're doing it again, and watching it circle the drain and just crossing our fingers, Daren, and hoping that we can say something that hits somebody.
Yeah.
Because since COVID, alcoholism, addiction, and overdose is up 40%.
Yeah.
Nationwide. So I think this brings up a point of there's a fine line. It's almost like we walked into it accidentally.
Yeah, it's true. And almost walked out of it accidentally too, individually. Like you walked out of yours almost like, you kind of wake up going, like, what did I learn? How did that happen? Man, I want to help, and you start to look back and gather resources. But yeah, this business of being a human is not easy. And I think the question that everybody has to ask and be really careful of asking is, it's not how you feel or what you're doing or what you're addicted to or what you can't stop, what you can, or it's why.
And that's the way out, right? Why?
Yeah. Yes. Why? Where did this come from? I don't know. It's just complicated. I don't want to talk about it, or I don't even know what to talk about. Well, then we can't help get you well.
Right.
Well, that's not fair. Give me something. Let me meditate or give me a pill or no, like we have to go back upstream to find out where this red coloring is coming from. Well, just fix it, like dye it or bleach it let's keep
cut it off.
Yeah. Let's go up further and further and further. And if we're able to go up far enough, we see where those inks are being dripped in of depression and anxiety and chronic pain and inability to connect intimately. That's been a huge struggle for me. I mean, because of my experience and a lot of my own choices, frankly, right? Like
Mhm.
you can create a lot of your own issues, and I've certainly created most of mine. You get a little bit of help from your early experience, and then you start making decisions that start cascading and stacking on top of each other. And then, you're sitting there going, oh man, I'm in this prison of thought and neurosis, but I think I created it, and it's
Yeah,
like, well, now what do I do? Well, all of us do that. That's not rare to the human. And it's like you've got, I mean, it's like you've got what was that? There's an old saying, it's like, Daren, you have a can of soup in one pocket and a spoon and a can opener in the other, and you just walk around hungry. Well, you've got those tools, and you've got what you need, but learning how to open and put those together and ingest that stuff, especially mentally, like you said, this mental health issue. I mean, you've got to do that. Otherwise, literally, it's just symptom management, and it's a joke. It's a joke.
it is a
to
joke.
it's a joke, and that's where people go. You walk into the doc and say what we talked about. I'm in pain. I don't feel good. I don't have any motivation. I'm tired all the time. I can't connect. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I make the wrong choices. And you can almost hear the typewriter going, writing scripts, or the pad, or the scribe in the background. Okay, we got it. Something to help them sleep, and an anti-anxiolytic, and we got to do this, and a mental health referral, and okay.
Well, and also that you've got mental health professionals and doctors, like you were saying, who are telling you that you need to be on this XYZ medication.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
not, there's getting to be more and more, but doctors like you are a breath of fresh air, Daren, because most people, they're not even seen, they're looked through.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you look at data, some of these people that kind of wave this big white coat medicine flag, if you actually look at the data, and I'm going to give a huge plug to Dr. Irving Kirsch.
Hmm.
Irving Kirsch, Google this guy.
Hmm.
He was an FDA PhD doc, and was heavily involved in drug approval processes, and efficacy and studies and all of that. And he just exploded, several years ago, and just said this whole thing is a sham. This whole thing is a sham. For certain mental illnesses that are really organic, we have some spectacular medicines for those. Spectacular. And you've got to make sure you leave that. It's like the type 1 diabetic and insulin. Truly, it's like that. You get some people that are so organically mentally sick that if they don't take their medicine, they're going to do something really bad. Right. And
Yeah.
and that's the truth. But then
Yep.
almost everybody else taking SSRIs and SNRIs and MAOI inhibitors and all of this stuff, tricyclics, to try to get out of depression or become happy. It just doesn't work. And there's no data even to support that. The data is garbage. It doesn't exceed the placebo almost ever. It's wild.
No.
It's wild to look at.
Wow.
And but yeah, I look at his stuff. He's much more well read than I, and he's done a lot more data digging than I. But his studies are just, they stand muster, and they're awesome. I mean, I know I'm talking a lot, but I want to tell you a really cool experience I had. So when I first started the bridge, I'm still messy, right? But I was more messy then, thank goodness. But I was dealing with this qigong master, and we were working together, kind of going through these really beautiful movements, and I was trying to like understand how the body and the mind were trying to solve problems and illnesses. And I was having this kind of cool experience, but I was underdeveloped, and undeveloped with intimacy, and some other things, and still am in some ways. But I started to get this ripping headache. And I said, hey, stop. Let's stop, Katrine. I need to go. I'm just going to chew up a couple of Tylenol. I've got some in the cupboard right there. And I don't want to miss this. I'll come back. And I'll slaughter her accent, but she had this really beautiful, German, Swedish accent. She's just like, Daren, what you going? I'm like, I need to have some help with this headache. So I'm going to go chew up some Tylenol, and just give me a few minutes. And this big smile, huge smile, and she puts my face in her hands, and she says, Darren, if only headaches were Tylenol deficiencies.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and I was just like, wait, what? She goes, "Are you deficient in Tylenol?" And I'm like, "Well, no." She said, "Then that's not what you need." And I'm like, "Well, what do I need?" And she says, "That's why we're working." And I'm like, "Oh."
Yeah.
Like I just
I,
hadn't,
I hadn't considered I had
yeah,
got a Tylenol deficiency.
right. But in my mind, I'm thinking, is depression a Prozac deficiency? No.
No,
No. Is pain an opiate deficiency?
no.
No. Right? Is anxiety a benzodiazepine deficiency? No. No. Is sleep an Ambien deficiency or a Lunesta or whatever? I mean, there's so many, right? We're not deficient in the things that we're treating with. We're
And
deficient.
if you wake up and you're cutting the kitchen sponge into pieces, that may not be the medicine for you.
Right, right. Or you're in the closet, with four coats on and one shoe rocking back and forth. It's like, well, at least I got a couple hours of sleep. Like, well, no.
You passed out.
Right.
You're just
So
now coming to, but
yeah, and so we have this really wonderful movement of good men and women and providers of all kinds, regardless of the alphabet soup behind their names. I think if anybody can help, they should be helping.
yeah,
And
and we're gonna definitely get your contact information and all the links to the Bridge Wellness Center in the show notes, so you can make sure we get all of our listeners over to you. Well, we're almost out of time. I have to have you back on, my friend, because um, we do need to talk about some more things. And I wanted to see, you were talking about the dark, and you and I both have had some long conversations about that.
right.
What would you tell you in the early days of the Bridge?
Boy, if I could go back and have a conversation with me, number one, I would say there is a way out. You have to believe that. Otherwise, you're faking it all the time. You have to truly believe that there's a way through. And that's a really important word. The only thing that keeps us stuck as humans is our lack of development, right? It's not that we're bad or good or any of that. It's that all of us have certain areas of our lives that we're just not very well developed in. I mean, physically, in some other ways, I'm very well developed. Other ways, I'm a mess, And
Yeah.
so you have to focus your effort. If you're honest with yourself, I mean, dead straight honest, you've got to focus your efforts on the pieces of you that aren't very well developed. So I would say, Daren, like there is a way through, not around, not over, not under, but through. There's a way through. Suck it up. Like you've got to go through, and that does exist. And you've got to be dead straight honest with yourself and consider your lack of development. And if you want to know what your lack of development is, really look at all of the areas of your life that aren't going very well. And then you'll notice, oh, wow, my intimate relationships. Well, then you're not developed there. You need development. You don't need reprimand or shame or pills. You need development.
Right.
Physical body. Well, you need to learn how to develop that. My spiritual mind. I don't believe in anything. Well, that needs development. It doesn't need criticism or so I think a couple of those buzzwords you've got to go through. There is a way through, and the way through is development. It's to educate your system, and I hope that there's a lot more people coming into this, because it really is the way through.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Brooks. And I will see you on the next episode of Recovery Comes Radio. Everybody have a good night out there.
Hey, thanks, Adrian. Love you. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Recovery Comes Home Radio. We hope that today's episode has provided you with valuable information and insights on the recovery process. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. Keep seeking support, practicing self-care, and moving forward one step at a time. Until next time, stay strong, stay resilient, and stay humble. Hope lives here.